So we talk about the DevOps transformation, and there's all this positive, it's going to do this, and going to do this, it's going to do this, right? Make no mistake, like this, the digital transformation into DevOps is not easy. It's not trivial, right? You don't just like click a button and we're doing DevOps now. It involves new practices, it involves new skills, it involves new tooling, sometimes new infrastructure. It's quite involved, right? So in order for a company to decide we're going to do this, there's got to be some tangible benefit to it, right?
The benefits of DevOps for most organizations are about efficiency, optimization.
And efficiencies ultimately translate to a cost savings, cost reduction.
You're maximizing the potential of your engineers and all the folks who are working on product. You're maximizing the efficiency of all the people who are working on operations, really supercharging their ability to collaborate one with another.
The whole reason behind DevOps adoption is to increase software release velocity. It's all about putting out product, software applications in an extremely expedient manner. And of course, as we know, the software applications are the lifeblood of an organization. I mean, that's what's really driving the ability for organizations to differentiate themselves and gain a competitive advantage in the market. So the faster you can get software out there, start adding new features and functionality, the more successful the business can be, and everybody's happy and making money and such.
Some of the things that I have seen as far as companies moving forward to increase their velocity and how quickly things come out has been incredible. You would think, how often did software come out back in the early days of Microsoft Windows or some of these really core applications we look at, like Office. Now you're getting daily updates, weekly updates. You're getting things that come out very, very quickly, especially when you look at like response to security incidents and things like that. Some of these things come out overnight, and that never would have been imaginable before the advent and the adoption of DevOps.
To me, the biggest benefit to a company implementing a DevOps strategy is you are no longer on your back foot with your own competition. If you are competing with another company that is using DevOps tooling and practices, they are going to do everything that you're doing, but better and faster and more reliably. And refusing to modernize and do things in a more reliable, collaborative way is just hamstringing yourself for no reason.
A part of DevOps that most people don't realize is this continuous testing and performance evaluation that becomes part and parcel of your entire process. Because not only are you doing the development, but you have an automated way of testing it, of making sure it's performant, it's doing what it should be doing. There is compliance as part of that testing as well. So all of these things would be like individual operators or operations that you had to do separately. But now, because you do it as part of the same pipeline, it becomes incredibly efficient. And it just makes the end user experience that much more superior, because less bugs means less headaches for the IT people and ultimately the developers.
One of the key ideas of DevOps, which took from Agile, is this idea of small feedback loops, quick feedback loops, so that you're not waiting a year to collect all that input and then make a giant release out of it, and half those are no longer relevant anymore. It's the immediate feedback and tweaking as you go along.
You get more communication across the different stakeholders who are involved in that DevOps process. So for me, that transparency and the notion that the lowest level engineer can talk to the highest level C exec is one of the most valuable pieces, I think, of DevOps, being able to kind of communicate, collaborate, and really allow those feedback loops to tie into what you're really working on.
When you've got your dev and your ops working at cross purposes, that's not a good thing. Never is, whether it's sales and marketing, finance and sales. You want to get your various functions, your teams, empathetic of one another and working together. And so I think the biggest thing is this alignment. And by doing so, it allows you to meet your customer needs faster, to adapt to them more quickly.
I think there's a cool human element to what DevOps requires. And we ask people to do things very differently. And if you provide them the right tools to do it, they can really change the way that you can provide value to customers.
So seeing companies, even large legacy companies, really be able to take advantage of some of the efficiencies that come with DevOps has just been incredible to see. It's, of course, like who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to turn their current org's operational inefficiencies into efficiencies without having to increase headcount a lot or without having to spend a lot of money on scaling out because you don't really have a good grasp on what you have and what you're using. The benefits are really kind of limitless.
A lot of people, they still think of Dell as, a product company that sells computers, right? They don't always realize that Dell's also a business as well that needs to have IT run that business, right? So they don't really think of Dell from that perspective.
We've adopted a culture of rapid innovation, rapid prototyping, and delivery as well. So I would say in the last few years, we have gone through a rapid change and this rapid change of DevOps.
We are a great case study because we are very much like the customers we serve. We are now almost 40 years old. We are a big company like a lot of the big companies we support. As a result, our IT department, we have a huge site. We've got a huge engineering group.
Dell Digital is roughly 10,500 people or so. And of that, we probably have at least between 6,000 and 7,000 developers.
I've been in Dell IT, supporting our business units. So all the e-commerce, online, offline sales, order management, finance, manufacturing, services. So we support all those different business segments.
So we get to run all Dell products, and we work very closely with the product organization, and we are probably one of Dell's largest customers. So we use everything.
We, like everyone else, has sort of grown over time, maybe more by default at times than by design. And so that was something we took note of and then implemented it. So we've now implemented the whole DevOps process. Took a period of time, but that has now become something that we can point to people to say, here's how we did it.
Our leadership knew that there was opportunity to improve what we were doing. And they didn't know at the time exactly what the solution would look like. We've been stagnant for a while, and we're a little too comfortable in our existing processes.
Our DevOps journey probably earnestly started in pockets of our development organization. I think the biggest problem that we saw sometime around 2016 or 2017, just post EMC integration, that our developers were super inefficient. And at that time, after we did a pretty detailed time and motion study on 500 developers, we saw that we were about spending 20% of our time writing code. And there's an IDC study in 2021 that even did 2,500 developers across the whole globe. And the average time that developers spend writing code is 16% of the time. There is a huge amount of a developer's job that can be standardized. And our objective when we went down the developer, experience path, and it's broader than DevOps for us, but let's just kind of stick with DevOps for a second. That was all about driving efficiency and driving the waste out of that pipeline. Right. It just was inefficient by design, user-centered design, like all of that upfront work has to be done or you miss the boat. I think once you're past that, I think is really where we have focused our energy. Designers are at the center of it, doing the work with the business teams or with their customer stakeholder. And then your engineering teams kind of are wrapped around that, right? Once you are past that and you kind of have good user stories and you know what you need to start doing, that is where I think DevOps has such a huge impact. It's like even as far as pulling operations apart and putting them into the product teams, like we made that move through the product model transition. What that has resulted in is that on our product teams also sits the ops part of DevOps, and we've made our developers own what they produce.
There are two components: redefining how a dev team engaged with the business, making that a more, a simpler process, more streamlined process, more direct process. But also, it was shifting all of the accountability for an application to the product team themselves. And I mean all aspects of it. Where you go back 15 years ago, We had, my job is to write code. It's somebody else's job to test it. It's
Throw it over
somebody
that
else's
wall.
job to deploy it.
Right.
Somebody else's job to support it. Now with this new transformation that we've gone through, all of that accountability is shifted to the product owner themselves.
And I think one of the reasons we've seen such great change in like quality, stability, is because it's fixed real time. You deploy code on a Friday and there's an issue on Sunday, right? It's not fixed at a later point in time. It's fixed right there and then, which I think has resulted in better quality and better jobs for people. So, and I think you can't forget those two things, because as you're trying to take a organization at that scale on a journey with you, there's got to be a win-win for the people.
Yeah, before this, we were all aligned to what we call block releases, where for the most part happen 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes up to 5 or 6, but that was about it. And we would have 300 applications deploying over the same weekend because of the interconnectivity between these apps. Yeah, we broke down existing applications into microservices, made those microservices cloud native or at a minimum running in a container environment. And now the new standard for creating new applications is that it must run, in independently in their own space, managing your dependencies in either a cloud or a hybrid environment.
So it's a pretty significant practice, running about 3,000 applications, I'd say about 20,000 microservices in that mix of what I just told you. When you look at our productivity measurements, we go back and we kind of snap the line around 2019 when we really first looked at this. In 2019, we were doing about 22,000 user stories. Last year, we hit 237,000 user stories. So when you really think about what I'm saying, there's clearly something in that has made such a huge difference at how we support the company. Same time, user incidents reduced like a rocket, right? I do think there is something really beautiful about, not to be corny, but really beautiful about driving that type of efficiency for your developers, because they don't want to do the stuff that doesn't matter. What we've brought together as a practice within Dell Digital is a very streamlined and operationally efficient DevOps practice that we use across all of our development organizations. I don't think we're the organization we were 3 years ago. I think that has changed radically, but I do think as each year goes by and as our productivity is through the roof, I think it's hard to argue the points that we haven't fundamentally changed the way that this company operates from a technology perspective. Our DevOps journey was long in the making, and I think that's really, really important for people to understand, because there's no light switch or easy button, or because it genuinely is people process technology. That very old adage that still applies. It's still true.
We're our own case studies. We actually have lived it. We've got the scars on our backs to show it. And here's how we can help you hopefully avoid the same mistakes that we made along the way.
It's interesting because I think now that we're 12 years in, 13 years after the idea of DevOps was created, I do still see the implementation being very difficult for companies, in the sense of you had the progressive organizations that grew up in tech and grew up in cloud native and DevOps was possible, but then maybe the larger organizations that didn't start off with that culture, it's not as easy to implement.
In my mind, you have ambitious leaders trying to solve big problems, right? And what often goes wrong there is that they try to boil the ocean, they try to change everything, and the immune system materializes and rightly maybe try to shut the whole program down because maybe, right, the risk is actually too high.
And I've seen this and I've lived through it, where a company CTO will say, hey, we want to adopt DevOps, so let's get at it, and you have a year to do it, right? The reality is DevOps strategy is not an easy undertaking. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of changes culturally and organizationally that you need to make. I think there's a big challenge in trying to adopt it too quickly and too large in terms of the whole company.
Just start really small and figure out what you can do. You've got to eat the big brisket, one little piece at a time. If you eat a brisket all at once, it's not cool.
You're gonna feel bad.
And sometimes you have two different organizations within the company that are split down the middle because one wants to do it the new way, one wants to do it the old way.
I hear folks all the time who are in this space trying to make DevOps happen in a way that benefits them and their organization. And definitely the most common question that I hear is, how do I convince X that this is a good idea? Because that's how it all starts. Is you have to convince people that you need to do this and get everyone on the same page about what that is.
I would say that the shift in the culture, it really starts with convincing your people that it's a good thing for them.
There have been people that had been, in this environment for a long time, and they had tried throughout the years to drive change. So you have these people that have been doing the same thing for years and thought, oh, this is just another initiative. Yeah, I'll just hold out a year or two and I'll be back to.
And the person who was championing will have left the company.
They'll be gone. There'll be a new guy come in, new person come in and lead this, and I'll just wait that out too. But I'm just going to say business normal, and I'm going to ignore all of that. There were some of that, but then whenever you actually started showing them that, hey, this isn't, this is possible, and showing them that, let me take your application, and we did this in a few cases, said, give me your application. We took their repository, we built out the application, and we sent that application through our new pipelines and said, look how the builds are automated, the validation's automated, the integration's automated. You don't need to go talk to anyone now about getting a change into production. Just create these automated jobs. It'll create the change for you. And started showing them with their asset. That probably had the biggest effect on some of those guys that were little skeptical.
So I hear it both ways. I hear from leadership in organizations. How do I convince my engineers that have been doing this for many, many years, that are kind of stuck in their ways? How do I convince them that they should make this change? But I think I hear it more often the other direction. I'm an engineer and I want to have more fun at work. I want to be able to focus on the things that I think are great about my job. I think DevOps can help me do that. How do I convince my CTO, my leadership team, that we should make major changes to the culture of our organization to achieve this? If they could articulate it that well, I think they'd already be in a really good position. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of it is expressing the value proposition and how it would change things within the org.
One of the biggest challenges culture is DNA. If this is a bottoms-up initiative where you had a few IT folks say, we're gonna go do this, but nobody above them has bought in or thought about this, and then the end of the day, they're gonna fail. So challenge number one is you have to have the right top-down culture and leadership in place to make this work.
And I feel like in order for DevOps to work, DevOps has to be your engineering culture, right? It can't be like, we do engineering and we do DevOps. Like this is how we operate, right? And you see a lot of companies who, they kind of dip their toe into it, right? Mm-hmm. So they can check a box, say, oh yeah, we do DevOps. We have a Jenkins server, but instead of like really embracing it, like I said, as the culture and getting that right.
I've been at one conference talking to some from a bank, and I'd asked them, are you implementing DevOps? And they said, well, we'd be kind of DevOps-ish. And I think if you go in and you do half of it and then wonder why it doesn't work like the whole thing, I think the fact that you end up with not great results is probably not surprising.
It takes work, and that's the problem. Like putting the work in, saying you do the thing versus actually doing the thing, it's very different. And so it takes consistent work.
There's a lot of power in it. It's not easy.
I've seen that in also our customers. I've seen them successful when they were allocating people to the DevOps project. So you start with a project, then you allocate people to that project, and then you are starting the process. So the people that don't do that, the company that don't do this aspect, maybe they may fail, as you say, just using the tools, but you don't know how, where, there's no a clear direction. You shouldn't use DevOps as a side project of your existing project, right? You should allocate a DevOps project, and that would be mostly successful.
But then on the other side, you have companies that only know DevOps. They were born in the cloud, or they were born later on, that's how they've always operated.
Right.
But I guess the question is, like, you know, you say like people understand it's culture methodology, and they define it so differently wherever they go. Like, how do you overcome the inertia that they have in that? Maybe if that culture isn't fixed, or that culture has problems, or it was never established right, you know, but they kind of mostly do it. Like, how do you say, hey, there's a better way to do this? How do you overcome that resistance?
That's a very good question. It's not an easy one.
A lot of people start saying that they are doing DevOps and they're practicing DevOps when they may not actually be doing that. And they may not be taking advantage of the community to learn how to do it better. And so I think that leads into the problem of companies. When you have a misdefinition of DevOps, you start doing a thing and then you get stuck, right? Like either someone decides that DevOps doesn't work and you scrap it and you don't look for a way to do it better and you go back to whatever you were doing before, or you sort of get on this thing of, well, DevOps is the way, and therefore this awful thing that we're doing, because we don't really understand it, that must be the best practice.
Maybe when you don't know if you are doing the right place, you're maybe following the best practices, or checking in the community, sharing with the community, right? And listening from the others, what they're doing, how they're doing that, and joining some initiative about DevOps. Some, you know, there are lots of foundation initiative, community that define also that.
I like how you phrase that about checking in with the community, because I feel like the real strength of DevOps is in the community. It's not in the vendor. It's the community kind of not defines the culture, but the community will tell you when you're off of it, right? Like, this is not really, you're looking for this kind of ideal, you're looking for this kind of philosophy or methodology based on kind of a consistent practice through the community, right?
That's why I think there are foundation institute standards. If we define a standard, everyone is adherent to this standard, this manifesto, this standard, right? And anyone implement on its own, but stay close to the standard. And the community help defining the standard. Many vendors, many contributors, also outside the vendor, define the standard for everyone. And it's a joint effort from the community.
But I think the thing that DevOps does promote more than any other kind of technical movement beforehand is that community. Like, that is how that culture spreads. You can't just implement DevOps in a vacuum, because you're going to get it wrong. So in the end, you see time and time again that companies, regardless of size, whether they're large legacy companies or small startups or whatever, that either as they adopt DevOps fundamentals or as they just apply them, they really supercharge their velocity. They really are able to get products out, and they're really able to iterate on these products and make them more efficient. They're able to make these products more stable, more reliable, more resilient, with more features and better security in a much faster time than was ever possible before. So like, yeah, there are roadblocks, there are challenges to implementing DevOps, but time and time again, it's been proven that it's been worth it to companies, to the products, and to their customers. You really can't do modern software development without doing DevOps.